When the widowed baron faked illness, 5 people left, but 1 person surprisingly stayed to help. Jonathan Greenfield stared at the meticulously framed accolades that lined the walls of his sunlit study, once a sanctuary of knowledge and inspiration. The once vibrant plaques now felt like tombstones, silent witnesses to his disintegration. He rubbed his temples as the memory of Catherine's laughter haunted him. Her absence carved a hollow space in his heart. The financial scandal that followed her sudden death had uprooted everything. Friends became phantoms, leaving him stranded in a dark sea of betrayal, their faces fading like autumn leaves whisked away by unrelenting winds. An idea, born from desperation, crept into his mind. A sickening plan to feign terminal illness to apex sympathy. Would they care then? Would those once docile friends who had abandoned him come rushing back, weaving a makeshift support network amidst his not-so-fictitious demise? With each passing thought, Jonathan felt a new moral dilemma brush against his conscience. Could he really manipulate their concern to regain what was lost? As these thoughts twirled in his mind, unease twisted his stomach. He threw himself onto the couch, the fabric scratching against his skin, but it gave him no comfort. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days dragged on, each moment amplifying Jonathan's internal chaos. He returned to his study amid the haunting silence, as paranoia seeped into the cracks of his thoughts. Who would come? Who could he trust? First, it was Roger, his erstwhile confidant, who had drifted off. A brief phone call crumbled into awkward silence, quickly met with Roger's feeble excuse to avoid lingering, the shattering sound of friendship collapsing under the weight of disgrace. Betrayal gnawed at him. Again and again, Jonathan watched former colleagues slip away, their faces morphing from concern to discomfort as his facade of illness hardened. Like shadows, they evaporated, revealing their true colors, wounds that couldn't be healed. The tight knot of anxiety churned in his chest, tightening with each unanswered call, each empty message that weighed down his heart. Yet then, there was Sarah. When she appeared unexpectedly at his doorstep with that trademark determination shining in her eyes, he felt a spark stir within. "I'm here to help, Jonathan. What's really going on?" Her faith clashed with his lies, igniting a flicker of hope but igniting a sense of responsibility too heavy to bear. How could he admit the truth in the face of her kindness? The rising warmth she exuded made him tremble, caught between his sins and the glimmer of salvation she represented. With the dust of his past settling into an unresolved haze, Jonathan grappled with the interplay of ambition and worthlessness. He teetered on the edge. Would he genuinely find redemption, or would the weight of his own pride continue to suffocate him? A storm brewed inside his mind as deceit twisted into a tether, pulling tighter while he fought for breath. The clock ticked ominously, drawing him closer to the brink of devastating revelation. Would he act before it was too late? The abyss of decisions loomed, the stakes higher than they had ever been. In that charged moment, as Sarah leaned closer, her eyes searching for the truth behind his facade, Jonathan was thrust into an agonizing confrontation with his past, each heartbeat amplifying the urgency of choices waiting to be made. Would he shatter the silence of his deceit, or twist further into solitude? The choice hung in the air. Jonathan's heart raced as he met Sarah's gaze, her unwavering belief in him a balm to his seeping wounds. He could almost hear the echo of his own doubts clashing against her fierce conviction. What if he told her everything? Would her faith hold up against the shattering pillars of his lies? The irony that the hope she brought could also be the catalyst for his ruin slithered through his mind. "Jonathan." Her voice, soft yet firm, pulled him from the spiraling abyss of his thoughts. He swallowed hard, the decision fluttering precariously at the edge of his mind. Could vulnerability be a path to recovery? Or would it lay him bare to the very betrayal he had tried to shield himself from? As she waited, her sincerity began to thaw the ice that encased his heart. Every fleeting moment felt like a countdown, the urgency crystallizing the shame that coursed through his veins. "Sarah, I don't know where to start." His admission trembled in the air between them. "Just be honest," she urged, leaning closer, her presence igniting the flicker of courage brewing within him. "You've faced so much alone. You don't need to do this by yourself." Breath caught in his chest. He grappled with the storm inside, weighing his urge for truth against the habit of deceit. The weight of Catherine's death loomed in his memory, draping shadows over the promises he'd made himself. Then, without fully understanding why, words spilled from his lips, raw and unrefined. "I'm not sick, Sarah. I've been pretending. I thought if I faked illness, maybe the people who left would come back. I thought I needed their sympathy to survive." His confession hung in the air, laden with secrecy, as Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "Why would you feel you'd need to do that?" Her tone softened, understanding intertwining with compassion. Jonathan stood as if anchored to the spot, the enormity of his admission swelling in his chest. "Because I lost everything. It felt like this was my only recourse to get them back, to prove that I still mattered." The realization hit him like a sledgehammer. There was no solace in disguising his pain. "Your worth doesn't depend on others' opinions, Jonathan," she said gently, yet her words struck him like an arrow. "You are not defined by how others react to your struggles. You need to find your strength from within." Her faith in him stirred something long dormant. As he grasped her hands, he felt the warmth of connection resituating him, piercing the veil of isolation. The scalding shame mixed with the desire for accountability sparked a latent embers of ambition. Could he truly turn this back around? "Maybe I can," he breathed, a newfound determination coating his voice. "Maybe I need to confront what I've lost, not in a deceitful way, but as myself. It's time to stop hiding." Her eyes sparkled, igniting something profound within him. "Now you're getting it. Start with honesty, Jonathan. Face your fears, and reach for what could redefine you." As the dawn of a new purpose began to shape his thoughts, Jonathan felt the walls of his self-imposed prison start to crumble. It was time to reconnect, to mend the frayed ties of friendship with integrity, not manipulation. But even as resolve anchored his spirit, a nagging uncertainty echoed through him. What if those he had deceived chose to remain in the past? Each step he envisioned toward reconciliation with his former life came with the shadow of rejection lurking at its heels. "Can you survive the consequences of owning up to this?" he thought, recognizing the gravity of the path ahead. "Can you confront the fallout?" Taking a deep breath, he leaned in closer to Sarah, prompting a flicker of hope to surge within him. They shared a moment of clarity, a synchronized heartbeat of potential rebirth. But with every step he planned to take, a new reality expanded. The fragile tapestry of his life might very well disintegrate, or it might weave a renewed fabric, richer and stronger than before. What Jonathan didn't yet realize was the depth of the repercussions he was about to face. The moment he approached his former friends, unmasked and vulnerable, would be the truest test yet. Would they welcome him back, or would the truth shatter whatever hope still flickered in his soul? And just as he wavered on the precipice of his decision, Sarah's voice sliced through the uncertainty. "Then let's make this right together." But in the recess of his mind, one burning question remained. Was he truly ready to face the judgment that awaited him? The sun dipped low in the sky, casting golden hues across the bustling city streets, as Jonathan's heart thudded with each step. His hands trembled slightly, a blend of anxiety and anticipation coursing through him. Sarah's presence lingered in his mind, her words echoing like a promise of salvation. He was determined to embark on this journey of honesty, yet he felt the weight of his past pull at him like an anchor. He glanced at his phone, the screen illuminating with a reminder of his former friends, Charlie, Lucy, and the rest of the group. People he had once laughed and cried with, shattered connections stitched together only by fleeting texts and distant memories. They hadn't been there during the darkest hours. Why would they care now? That thought crept in, a familiar whisper of doubt that tightened around his resolve. "Get it together," he muttered to himself. shaking his head to dispel the creeping negativity. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about reclaiming who he was. This was his moment, a chance to step into the sunlight, to redefine his identity, not as the sick man he had pretended to be, but as Jonathan, the flawed, grieving friend who was ready to make amends. At a small cafe where laughter and casual chatter buzzed, he took a seat at a corner table, staring at the door like it bore the weight of an impending trial. The minutes dripped by, each second stretching into an agonizingly long wait. He couldn't help but ponder the reactions he might face. A part of him yearned for understanding, while another part braced for judgment, the fallout of his deceit looming large like a tempest on the horizon. As the bell above the door jingled, Jonathan's heart raced. Lucy entered, her radiant smile quickly fading to a look of surprise upon seeing him. For a heartbeat, he wanted to shrink back into his chair, to vanish within its confines. But he knew that fleeing was no longer an option. He needed to forge ahead. "Jonathan?" she said, her voice a blend of confusion and concern. "Hey, Lucy." He gestured to the empty seat across from him, his throat dry as sand. "Can we talk?" Her hesitance was palpable, but she slowly sank into the chair. The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken history. Jonathan could feel the weight of anticipation, the ground they hadn't covered lingering in the silence, waiting for the right moment to unravel. "I've missed you guys," he began, his voice quivering slightly. "I've missed this." "Missed what?" she asked, an edge of skepticism creeping into her tone. "You've been MIA for so long. We thought, I know." He swallowed the rising tide of emotion, careful not to drown in the vulnerability threatening to spill over. "I've been pretending. I faked my illness and... well, I thought maybe if I stayed sick, you would care enough to come back to me. But it didn't work. I just pushed everyone further away." Lucy's expression softened, yet disbelief lingered in her eyes. "John, that's a lot to unpack. Why would you think you needed to do that?" "Because losing you all felt worse than being sick," he confessed, a lump rising in his throat. "I thought it was the only way to hold on." "I wish you had just told us," she replied, pain etching her brow. "We would have been there for you, like we always were. You didn't need to trick us." Jonathan nodded, the shame flooding through him like ice water. "I was scared. Scared of being alone. I've built this walls to protect myself, but they just left me isolated. But why now? Why come back, Jonathan?" She searched his eyes, seeking truth amidst his tumultuous confessions. "Because I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to be honest. About everything. This facade only brought me shame, and I'm tired of living a lie." A silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of truth. Jonathan felt raw and exposed, but strangely liberated. "I need to reconnect, with you, with everyone. But I understand if that's not what you want." Lucy's gaze was piercing, her compassion stripped bare. "It's not easy, John. Trust isn't easily rebuilt. But I suppose you deserve a chance to try." Jonathan inhaled deeply, hope flickering in the chasm of uncertainty. Just maybe. This was the first step toward redemption, toward reclaiming the life he had pushed away. But the shadows still lurked at the edges. Was there enough left to rebuild? As they sat in the cafe, words flowing between them, he realized this was only the beginning. There would be others to face, and even more truths to confront. With every confession, he breathed a little easier, knowing he must gather the courage to confront all the disconnections, and ultimately face the hardest challenge of all, himself. But would the others be as willing to grant him the forgiveness he desperately sought? The time had come to face them one by one, and with trepidation boiling within, Jonathan prepared for the next inevitable confrontation. The cafe's ambiance shifted as conversations around them began to fade into the background, leaving only the two of them in the spotlight of uncertainty. Jonathan felt the electric tension surround them, pulsing an awareness that propelled him into a new territory. The clarity of purpose ignited a determination within him. If honesty had the potential to unravel old wounds, perhaps it could also weave new bonds. As Lucy's gaze lingered on him, Jonathan understood that her willingness to hear him out was a thread of hope. Yet, as each lingering silence passed, doubt clawed at him, whispering reminders of failure. He needed to transform those whispers into something constructive. "Can we reach out to Charlie?" he ventured, his voice steadying with each word. "I have to confront him too. I can't keep running from the past." Lucy folded her arms, contemplation flickering across her features. "He'll be surprised. I can't promise he'll react how you hope." "I need to face the music, Lucy. He deserves to know why I ghosted everyone," Jonathan asserted, the fear rising but tempered by resolve. "If I'm serious about mending these relationships, I've got to own up fully." With a slight nod, Lucy offered tentative agreement, though her expression still held traces of skepticism. "All right, let's do it together, but be prepared for anything. Charlie has been hurt." Jonathan took a deep breath, allowing the air to rise within him like a wave of newfound courage. The thought of reaching out to Charlie sent jolts of anxiety through his system, their past camaraderie now tinged with the bitterness of unaddressed betrayal. Yet beneath the apprehension was also an ember of anticipation for reconciliation, however distant it seemed. They made plans over the next few hours, crafting a message that felt honest, devoid of pretense. With Lucy by his side, the task seemed less daunting. For every shared laugh and memory, however frail, Jonathan felt the contours of their friendship reclaiming their rightful place, a reminder of who they once were and who they could be again. As twilight descended, Lucy's phone chimed, a notification from Charlie. Jonathan's pulse surged. Uncertainty knotted in his stomach. He silently prepared to confront this new chapter, but alongside the anxiety was a flicker of optimism. Rebuilding could be painful, but abandonment had left deeper scars. Jonathan and Lucy read the message together. Charlie expressed surprise, but a willingness to talk. The immediate anxiety faded slightly, replaced by a cautious sense of empowerment. "See? People might have a different take on what happened," Lucy said, a gentle smile breaking through her earlier doubts. "You're making an effort." Efforts had previously eluded him, locked away in a prison of fear and self-deception. The realization struck him. This was not just about repairing broken friendships. It was about reclaiming his own identity as well. If truly living meant embracing vulnerability, then this was the path, however daunting it seemed. But as they arranged to meet Charlie, a new weight settled on him. What if the thrill of newfound courage dissipated in the face of confrontation? As much as he wished for acceptance, he couldn't shake the fear of additional rejection. Life had taught Jonathan one irrefutable lesson. Walls erected to shield oneself often imprisoned the spirit. With every step forward, he was chipping away at those walls, striving for connection that had felt irrevocably lost. Yet, would he find it on the other side of this conversation? An existential paradox taunted him. Was he truly willing to shed the remnants of his past, knowing they were part of his tapestry? But in doing so, a realization sparked. Perhaps these very encounters stood at the threshold of renewal. Together, they stepped into the night, uncertainty wrapped around them like a second skin. The weight of the moment pulled taut, but Jonathan could almost sense the dawn breaking ahead. As they stood outside Charlie's apartment, anxiety coursed through Jonathan's veins. Would he find acceptance, or reopen wounds that threatened to consume him? The moment had finally arrived. He was ready to face the truth. "What if he doesn't want to hear it?" Jonathan murmured, pausing at the door. "Then you'll know," Lucy replied, her voice firm yet compassionate. And that's still progress. A simple knock echoed through the stillness, blending with Jonathan's racing heart. He clenched his hands, determined to confront whatever lay within the threshold. With every ounce of bravery, he opened the door to face Charlie. Would they emerge with understanding, or would this be yet another stone on an already burdensome path? The anticipation crackled in the air, pulsating with raw potential. The door creaked open, revealing Charlie, with surprise etched across his features. The moment hung suspended, charged with an energy that bordered on explosive. Jonathan's heart raced as he swallowed hard, unsure how to bridge the chasm formed by years of silence and previous mistakes. "Jonathan? Is that really you?" Charlie's tone shifted from disbelief to cautious curiosity, his eyebrows knitting together, radiating a mixture of confusion, and guarded optimism. "Yeah," Jonathan managed, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "It's me. I wanted to talk. You have time?" Charlie stepped back slightly, opening the door wider. "Come in." Jonathan hesitated for just a second. The echo of their shared past loomed heavily, resurrecting memories he'd attempted to bury. But this was the moment. He walked in, with Lucy closely trailing behind, her presence a reassuring anchor. The apartment felt both familiar and starkly foreign, a physical representation of the untended rifts between them. Jonathan stood awkwardly, unsure where to begin. The room, filled with remnants of shared laughter and mutual dreams, transformed into a silent judge of all his past failures. "I didn't expect to hear from you, man. I thought you disappeared for good," Charlie said, his voice a mix of frustration and relief. "I deserved that," Jonathan said, gathering his courage. "I ghosted you, and everyone, because I didn't know how to handle my own shit. I'm sorry for leaving you all in the lurch." Charlie shifted uncomfortably, pain flickering across his face. "You thought just vanishing was the answer?" Jonathan nodded, feeling the weight of his choices pressing down on him. "At the time, that's all I could manage. I was struggling, and I thought isolation was the solution. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you." "Yeah, well, it did hurt," Charlie replied, his tone softening but retaining an edge. "You left without a word. I've had to process the fallout, you know. It isn't easy just picking up where we left off." "I get that," he replied, his voice steadying. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just want to be honest about why things went south. It doesn't excuse my actions, but I need you to know that I'm here to own up to them." "Do you even know what you want now? Is it just about clearing your conscience?" Charlie pressed, skepticism lacing his tone. But Jonathan could hear a thread of hope weaving into it as well. A crack in the icy wall of tension. "This isn't just for me. I need to gather the pieces of these broken relationships, even if it means facing the music," Jonathan said, determination igniting within him. "I want to rebuild what I broke. I can't go back to the past, but I can start fresh if you let me." As words rushed from his lips, Jonathan was surprised at the sureness within them. Each sentence felt like a building block towards something he thought irrevocably lost, a chance to reclaim the connections that defined him. Charlie's expression softened, a flicker of understanding passing through his eyes. The vulnerability of the moment resonated within the sparse apartment, and Jonathan's heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. "It's going to take time, you know. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight," Charlie replied, his voice quieter now but still cautious. "I'm willing to put in the effort," Jonathan affirmed, his heartbeat synchronizing with a new resolve. "No more hiding, no more ghosting. Can we take the first step?" With a heavy silence filling the room, Jonathan braced himself for the answer, a willingness to embark on a path of uncertainty, yet resolutely hopeful. As he awaited Charlie's response, a new wave of anxiety crashed over him. What if these initial steps only reawakened unhealed wounds? Would they be able to move forward, or would this moment seal another chapter of regret? Finally, with a tentative nod, Charlie spoke. "Let's start talking then. But be prepared, Jonathan. This won't be easy." Jonathan nodded, ready to engage fully in whatever lay ahead. Each second felt laden with possibility and peril, yet he felt that shift within, understanding that whatever came next was inherently crucial to his journey forward. "All right, let's get into it," he said, steeling himself as the walls of his past began to tremble, prompting a surge of apprehension and excitement. Little did he know, this conversation would ignite a cascade of revelations, spinning them into an uncharted territory of truth and healing. The stakes had never been higher. He was on the precipice of transformation. What secrets lingered in the shadows of buried pain, waiting to unravel? And how would he confront each painful truth? Jonathan felt the weight of the air pressing around him, heavy with unspoken truths. He could see the flicker of emotions play across Charlie's face, a complex blend of skepticism and longing. As he prepared to delve deeper, Jonathan recognized a new urgency within himself. It wasn't just about mending the rift. It was an opportunity to redefine who he was and what he could offer others. "Let's begin with the last time we spoke," Charlie suggested, his tone cautiously probing. "What were you thinking then? What pushed you to just leave?" Jonathan clenched his fists, the clenched muscles aching with tension. "Honestly, I was terrified. My life was spiraling, and I felt like a burden. I thought distancing myself would somehow make things easier for you, he admitted, the rawness of his choice flashing through his mind like an unrelenting movie reel. Charlie shook his head, disbelief darkening his features. That's not how friendship works, Jonathan. You can't just abandon people because you think it protects them. We were in this together. I know that now, Jonathan exclaimed, a slight plea coloring his voice. I thought isolation was the only way to get a grip on my life, to reshape it into something bearable. I didn't realize it turned into something so painful for everyone else. As the words spilled forth, Jonathan felt a flicker of anger directing itself inward. He had pigeonholed his feelings within walls of shame, only to realize how fragile those walls had become. Vulnerability surged through him, his earlier bravado giving way to uncertainty. Then what do you want from this, Jonathan? You don't just step back into someone's life without any explanation, Charlie pressed, a firmness in his voice that stung. What are you willing to do to make this right? Jonathan paused, sensing the pivotal nature of the moment. I want to confront my past, and I want you to be part of that process, he said, his voice steadier now. I want to face it with honesty, no more running. Whatever it takes to restore trust or move on, I'm ready for that challenge. Are you? Because your actions previously show a different picture, Charlie shot back, crossing his arms against the wall, a defensive posture that left Jonathan feeling exposed. Each word from Charlie pierced him deeper, an uncomfortable but necessary clash. Yet, amidst the unease, Jonathan felt clarity piercing through the fog of doubt. I understand, and I can't change what's already done. But I'm not that person anymore. I want to embrace the mess I created rather than ignore it. If you help, maybe I can create something new from the wreckage. Talk is cheap, Charlie said, a note of challenge lacing his remark. What proof do you have that you really mean it? Jonathan inhaled sharply, a surge of determination rising like adrenaline. He understood that proving himself was no longer about grand gestures. It would be about consistency, showing up day after day. But he had a spark of realization, one that strengthened his resolve. I'll show you. I'll reach out to the others I've hurt too. I want to start with the ones I've made feel abandoned or unworthy because of my absence. I'll take responsibility. And if it's too late for them, at least I'll know I didn't just walk away again. In an instant, the silence thickened, resonating with apprehension and the weight of possibility. Jonathan's heart raced, sensing the shift within him. He was no longer seeking a shortcut around his past. He was embracing the complexity of rebuilding, anchored in a newfound courage he didn't know he possessed. Charlie's gaze softened slightly as he shifted. That's a big step. Are you really prepared for the fallout? I can't predict how it'll go, but I'm ready to be uncomfortable if it means moving forward. I won't hide again, Jonathan declared, feeling the ground shift beneath him. This was the first step into a raw and honest landscape of relationships. His mind raced with the thought of whom to contact first. Old friends, acquaintances, or those he may have hurt beyond repair. It wasn't just about apologies. It was about reflection, real change, and potentially facing angry confrontations that could unearth buried truths. All right, Charlie finally said, an unexpected warmth threading through his voice. Let's see it then. But remember, this journey isn't a smooth ride. You'll have to deal with the consequences. Jonathan nodded, a fierce determination blooming within him. I know, but I'm not backing away this time. As they drew closer to a new chapter, Jonathan felt a surge of anticipation for the challenges ahead. He was ready, perhaps for the first time, to confront the remnants of his past and seize the potential for redemption. Yet deep down, a concern clawed at him. Were these wounds truly reparable? Would facing past hurts simply open old scars? Or could they lead to genuine healing? The unanswered questions loomed larger than ever as he prepared for the next steps of his journey. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching, and Jonathan knew he had to summon not just courage, but clarity. Before confronting faces that might hold memories he wasn't ready to rehash, Jonathan spent the next few days in a whirlwind of activity, the weight of his intentions pressing firmly against his resolve. Each morning, he woke with a mixture of excitement and dread, the thought of reaching out to those he had wronged causing knots to form in his stomach. The promises he had made to Charlie echoed in his mind, reverberating like a mantra reminding him of his commitment to change. On the first day, he decided to contact Sarah, his college roommate who had once been one of his closest friends. She had been understandably hurt by his abrupt departure. Jonathan always thought of Sarah as the one person who could read him better than he could read himself. Their conversations used to flow effortlessly, until they didn't. He stared at his phone, the cursor blinking on the screen where he began to type. "Hey Sarah, it's Jonathan. I know I owe you an apology. I'd like to talk when you're ready." He hesitated, thumb hovering over the send button. Would this be worth it? Would she even want to hear from him after all this time? With a deep breath, he pressed send, the ding of the notification echoing through the silence of his apartment. The response came hours later, a concise, restrained reply that felt like a slap. "Hey Jonathan, I'm busy. Maybe we can talk some other time." Jonathan closed his eyes, taking a moment to breathe through the sting of disappointment. It was a reminder that reconciliation didn't come easy, but he wasn't going to back down. He had taken the first step, and there would be other opportunities. Each subsequent day was fraught with similar tension and doubt. He reached out to various acquaintances, each message bearing the weight of his regrets. Some responses were cold, while others were polite but distant. He felt the chasm of time and consequences stretching between himself and the people he had once cared about. Still, he pressed onward, each interaction slightly strengthening his resolve. On the fourth day, Jonathan decided to contact his childhood friend Taylor. They had grown apart after Jonathan's withdrawal, and he feared the conversation might trigger unpleasant memories. He waited for the right moment, pouring himself a cup of coffee to steady his nerves. "Hey Taylor, I know it's been a long time. I hope you're doing well. I'd like to talk if you're open to it." He sent the message, mind racing with anxious anticipation. This time, the reply appeared almost instantly. "Of course, Jonathan. I've missed our talks. Let's meet up this weekend." Jonathan felt a rush of relief wash over him. Taylor was the first to show a willingness to reconnect, and his heart swelled with a mixture of hope and gratitude. Connecting with Taylor could be a pivotal moment in his journey. Over the next few days, Jonathan prepared for their meeting, wrestling with the thoughts of what he wanted to say. He envisioned their conversation spiraling into an authentic discussion about how his past decisions had ultimately culminated in his decision to drift away from his friends. He wanted to be completely honest and transparent, not just about his intentions, but also regarding the emotional turmoil that had led to his isolation. But as the weekend approached, a nagging feeling lingered. What if forgiveness was something he didn't deserve? What if, after all of his talk, he couldn't even offer an adequate explanation, let alone a viable path toward reconciliation? Jonathan hesitated, standing at the precipice of his own vulnerability, discomfort rippling through him like cold water on his skin. On the cusp of a potential breakthrough, he realized that this journey was about more than just reaching out. It was about understanding himself in those relationships, his flaws, his fears, and ultimately, his growth. As he prepared for the confrontation with Taylor, he questioned whether he was prepared to face the truth of his own shortcomings without excuses, or if the enormity of it all would simply paralyze him. The moment loomed closer as he steeled himself for their meeting. Would he find the strength to articulate the deeper truths of his absence and the weight they carried? The time had come to not just reconcile with others, but with himself, and that confrontation promised to be the most daunting of all. As the weekend dawned, Jonathan found himself pacing the small confines of his apartment, the echoes of the past rattling around in his mind like ghosts in an old house. He could feel the brittle edges of his anxiety tightening around him, constricting his thoughts. Taylor's response had given him a glimmer of hope, but now that hope felt suspended in a haze of dread. He glanced around at the familiar surroundings, the worn-out couch, the scattered remnants of takeout containers, the fading college poster on the wall. They all whispered stories of who he used to be and who he desperately wanted to reconnect with again. Yet, nostalgia mingled with a sense of profound loss. Loss for friendships that had withered through his neglect. Loss for the person he had become in his isolation. Jonathan took a deep breath, pacing back to the kitchen where he brewed another cup of coffee. The steam curled upward, temporarily obscuring his view of the world outside the window. He caught sight of the bustling street below, people moving with purpose, and he envied their ease and connection. He wondered if he ever had that ease, or if it had always been a facade. A flicker of doubt haunted him. Would Taylor even recognize the man he had become? Would their friendship dissolve under the weight of his unresolved mistakes? He reached for his phone, contemplating sending a reassurance to Taylor. What if his anxiety screamed louder than his intentions? He could rewrite the narrative. He would not allow fear to dictate his fate any longer. He needed to be honest, not just with Taylor, but with himself. As the hour of their meeting approached, Jonathan meticulously prepared. He wanted to find the right words to convey his feelings without falling into the trap of excuses. He rehearsed quietly, almost as if Taylor was right in front of him. Did he believe he deserved forgiveness? Would he be ready to embrace the vulnerability that came with admitting to his failures? The weight of the conversation crashed down on him, and he felt the familiar urge to retreat. But he paused, realizing that retreating this time would mean remaining trapped in a prison of his creation. It was time to confront the heart of the matter. The fear that he would not be enough, that the past could not be forgiven. He recalled the conversations he had once shared with Taylor, the laughter, the camaraderie, and the memories that seemed so distant now. He needed to reclaim that connection. It was pivotal for his growth, and a step toward reclaiming a piece of the life he had lost. Finally he set out, the evening air cool against his skin, grounding him. Each step toward the cafe felt weighted with expectation. The thrill of potential reconciliation clouded by the anxiety of possible rejection. As he entered, the bell above the door chimed, and he spotted Taylor seated at a corner table, looking as at ease as ever. The sight sent a pulse of warmth through Jonathan, as if familiarity wrapped around him like a well-worn blanket. "Hey, Jonathan," Taylor greeted, a smile breaking across his face that felt both welcoming and disarming. "Hey, thanks for meeting me," Jonathan replied, his heart drumming against his chest as he took a seat. As they settled into conversation, Jonathan could sense the unspoken tension lingering in the air, a reminder of the distance between them. He had arrived seeking forgiveness, but he also realized he needed to communicate the depth of his struggles, the darkness he had fought in silence. And as he spoke, the vulnerability laid bare. He discovered an odd sense of freedom. It wasn't just about seeking forgiveness, but also acknowledging his truth. Yet, would Taylor respond with patience, or would the burden of the past feel too heavy to navigate together? The truth hung in the balance, and Jonathan gripped the edge of the table, heart racing as he braced himself for Taylor's reaction. Would this moment bring closure or deepen the chasm? Even as he wrestled with those uncertainties, the path to personal development lay ahead. The confrontation with Taylor was just the beginning, and as the conversation unfolded, Jonathan sensed he was teetering on the edge of a revelation that could redefine his understanding of forgiveness, both from others and himself. What lay beyond this moment, he could only guess, but he was determined to embrace it fully. The questions loomed. What would Taylor's response reveal about their friendship and Jonathan's transformation? Could he withstand the answers? As Jonathan sat across from Taylor, he prepared to brace himself for every possible outcome. He blinked, his focus sharpening on the warmth of Taylor's expression. Just a few moments ago, the air had been thick with apprehension, but now, as he began to speak from his heart, a flicker of hope ignited within him. "I've been thinking a lot about us," Jonathan started, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "About how things fell apart, and how I made choices that hurt you and our friendship." The words poured from him, unfiltered, each syllable a testament to the weight he'd been carrying. Taylor's gaze didn't waver, and Jonathan felt strange warmth flooding his chest. It wasn't the reaction he had feared. Instead of recoiling, Taylor leaned in, a subtle cue that he was listening with intent. This moment, fragile yet powerful, began to stitch the years of silence back together. "I didn't know how to reach out," Jonathan continued, folding his hands tightly together, his pulse quickening. "I thought I could handle everything alone, like it was some kind of badge of honor. But it hasn't worked, not at all. I've missed you, and I've missed who I was when we were friends." An internal battle raged within him, fear of vulnerability, judgment, and the unknown. But there was also a growing determination to bridge the chasm between them. He felt as if each admission chipped away at the walls he had built. Taylor finally spoke, his voice calm yet laced with the weight of their shared history. "I've felt that distance too, Jonathan. I can't pretend that I wasn't hurt, but I also remember the good times. I want us to have those back." Jonathan's breath caught at those words. It wasn't just an olive branch, it was an invitation for reconnection. "I hate that I let you down. I've worked to change that, to understand myself better," he revealed, the words tumbling out like a long-held secret. "I'm learning that it's okay to ask for help, and that connection is something to be sought, not feared." In that moment, Jonathan discovered something vital. By allowing Taylor to see him as he was, flawed and striving for growth, he tapped into a newfound strength within himself. The anxiety that had once felt like a weight on his chest began to lift, replaced by the exhilarating realization that vulnerability could be a path to liberation. Just as Jonathan felt a surge of empowerment, however, a shadow of doubt crept back in. Could he maintain this newfound clarity amidst the complexities of life? Could he rebuild his confidence in such a precarious balance of trust and forgiveness? "What happens next?" Jonathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the question echoing the uncertainty that loomed in the corners of his mind. "I don't want to go back to how things were. I want to evolve. With you." Taylor processed this, and Jonathan sensed that a deeper conversation was unfolding, one that would not only determine the fate of their friendship, but also set Jonathan on a path towards self-actualization. The stakes felt high and tangible. Every decision, every word exchanged, felt like a thread in a larger tapestry of their relationship. As Taylor responded, the air thickened with possibility. Jonathan could feel every fiber of his being anticipating the next words. It was a moment not only for their friendship, but a potential turning point in his identity, a moment that could push him further into a journey of authentic living. His heart raced as Taylor's words fell into place. Where would this conversation take them? Would it truly pave the way to Jonathan's redemption, or would it confront him with uncomfortable truths he must face alone? No longer was he simply a bystander in his own life. He was actively participating in its unfolding. But with that participation came the harsh reality of facing whatever truths awaited him on this path forward. As the conversation unfolded between Jonathan and Taylor, the cafe atmosphere faded, leaving only their turbulent emotions in sharp relief. Jonathan's heart raced as every moment seemed monumental. He could feel the weight of every unspoken word thickening the air around them. The stakes had never been higher. It wasn't just about rekindling their friendship, but redefining who he was in the process. "I've thought about what you said, about not returning to how things were," Taylor finally said, sealing their pact in solemnity. "It means a lot that you recognize the mistakes, but rebuilding trust isn't going to happen overnight." Jonathan nodded earnestly, grappling with the fine thread of hope intertwined with caution. "I understand. I didn't come here expecting everything to revert to normal. I just wanted a chance to share my truth, to explain my absence. I feel like I've grown, but I also know that I need to demonstrate that through my actions moving forward." This admission caused a light to flicker in Taylor's eyes, a cautious optimism blossoming amidst the residual hurt. "Actions speak louder than words, John. It's good to hear you reflect on your journey, but I need to see consistency. Can you commit to that?" Again, Jonathan felt the internal tempest shift. This was his moment. "Absolutely, Taylor. I want to show you that I can be reliable again. I've been working on myself and reaching out to others I've wronged. This was the first step in that process. I truly believe reconnecting with you is pivotal to my growth." Taylor observed him closely, searching for the truth in Jonathan's gaze. In that moment, Jonathan wrestled with nostalgia, failure, and a sense of pride in his commitment to change. Heart racing, he anticipated Taylor reading the sincerity etched across his face. "Fine. Then let's start fresh. I'm willing to give this a chance, as long as you're ready to prove you mean it," Taylor finally said, a smile breaking the tension like light through storm clouds. Jonathan felt the burden of years lift off his shoulders, as if a long-held breath escaped him. "Thank you, Taylor. I promise not to take this lightly." As their conversation drifted into familiar territory, and laughter began to mix with their newfound determination, Jonathan felt the pieces of his confounding world start to coalesce. Each chuckle, every shared anecdote, sparked the embers of camaraderie back to life. He was not just amending past mistakes but forging pathways of resilience, brick by brick. Later, as they walked into the cool evening air, a contented silence stretched between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the journey that lay ahead. Jonathan allowed the gaze of possibility to settle over him. The past hadn't vanished, but its shackles were loosening, revealing a rich tapestry woven of hope, authentic connection, and renewed identity. In the days that followed, Jonathan made a conscious effort to reach out to old friends. Each conversation, sometimes awkward, sometimes celebratory, deepened his resolve to embrace vulnerability. He emailed Lucy, reached out to Sarah again, and even picked up the phone to call Roger, the one who had slipped away first. Each response varied. Some were warm and welcoming, while others were frigid and distant. It hurt, yet within that pain lay immense opportunities for growth. Jonathan absorbed their reactions, acknowledging that he couldn't control how others felt, only how he responded. One evening, standing in front of a mirror, Jonathan faced his reflection and felt the sense of change settle within him. He was no longer just a man cloaked in isolation. He was a work in progress, a promise of authenticity. With every pixel of his evolving image, he sensed the foundations of solid confidence cementing. He had shared his flaws, endured uncomfortable conversations, and even faced rejection. Yet, out of all of this emerged the realization of progress, born from taking responsibility, a step that few were willing to embrace. Eventually, during one of his routine check-ins, he received a text from Roger. It read, "Let's catch up? I think we've both got a lot to discuss." In that instant, Jonathan recognized the first bloom of recognition spilling through the cracks of his past like sunlight upon winter's thaw. He could feel the vibrant pulse of a long-lost friendship waiting to be born anew. He smiled at the screen, the bright light of a future unmarred by isolation resonating within him. Jonathan was beginning to recapture the essence of connection, the very foundation of his journey, begun in self-deceit, forged now in honesty and courage. As he put down the phone, a sense of completion enveloped him. He understood that personal transformation was not just about mending old wounds, but celebrating newfound strength and resilience nurtured through adversity. Jonathan had conquered his fears, achieved genuine connections, and reclaimed not just the trust of friends but of himself. As he stepped outside once again, the evening air enveloping him in its brisk embrace, he realized that he was finally aligned with the man he was always meant to be. He had fought through shadows to emerge illuminated, having learned that vulnerability was his greatest ally. This was not merely an ending, but the beginning of a profoundly richer story. A testament of redemption written not in isolation, but within the warmth of companionship. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your appreciation. Comment your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. And don't forget to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.